The fly on the leaf. The clearest window into how this works was opened almost by accident in a backyard in Berkeley. Carolyn Elia, then a graduate student, set out rotting fruit to trap wild flies for an unrelated experiment. When she came back, she found something else. Dead flies frozen in a strange upright pose, their abdomen banded with pale fungal growth. She had stumbled onto the work that would define her career now at Harvard. The fungus is called Entomopatha musk, and what it does to a fly is one of the cleanest demonstrations of mind control in all of nature. It begins with a spore too small to see brushing against a fly on rotting fruit, breaching the body and slipping inside. For days, nothing shows. The fly feeds and walks and behaves normally while the fungus grows within, drawing down its fat reserves, expanding into the tissues that govern movement. Then around the fourth or fifth day, the fly turns erratic and restless. And then it does something very specific. It climbs up stems, up leaves onto the highest surface it can reach. Elia named the behavior with the term the field now uses, summiting, and its purpose is cold and exact, to get the fly as high as possible for the widest spread of spores. At the summit, on a clock the fungus keeps with eerie precision. Elia found it strikes at sunset. The fly extends its mouth parts and glues itself in place with a sticky droplet. Its wings lift and spread. Its legs let go. It dies anchored exactly where the fungus needs it. Then the fungus pushes out through the body and fires hundreds of spores into the air to drift down onto the next flies and begin the whole story again. How the fungus drives the sequence is still being mapped, but Elia's work points to chemical signals released into the fly's blood. It's hemolymph, hijacking the circuits that decide when and where it moves. In one striking experiment, her team drew that fluid from infected flies and injected it into healthy ones, and the healthy flies began behaving as though they too had been zombified. Evidence that the manipulation can travel in the chemistry alone. The fungus even appears to hook into the fly's internal clock, the same circadian wiring that tells it night from day, which is how it can time the fatal climb to sunset with such precision. And here is the quietly humbling part. Flies dying in this exact upright pose were recorded in the scientific literature more than 150 years ago. Generations of naturalists saw it, sketched it, and never understood what they were looking at. We are only now, with people like Elia, beginning to read the mechanism behind a horror that has been playing out in plain sight the entire time. Like all of these organisms, this fungus is built so tightly around its insect host that it has no capacity to touch a human. Some researchers have even tried to turn fungi like these into natural pest control. The results have been limited because the very specialization that makes them flawless parasites also makes them nearly impossible to repurpose. They want nothing but to survive and spread. And within that narrow want, they achieve something that should be impossible. Total command of a living body written entirely in chemistry. Invisible until it is far too late to undo, where it ends. So step back and look at the whole shape of it. A spore lands on a leg by pure chance and sets off a chain that ends with an insect frozen on a leaf, raining down the cloud that will write the same story somewhere else. A fungus that drugs a hollowed-out cicada to keep it walking. A worm that talks a snail into its own death. A wasp that walks a living roach into a grave. Music, and a single-celled passenger sitting quietly inside a huge share of us still being studied. The reason scientists, music, are worried is not that any of this is about to leap into the human population. The walls protecting us are real, and the honest researchers say so plainly. Music, the worry runs deeper. It is the slow realization that this hidden world of biological control is far larger, far stranger, and far more widespread than anyone imagined even a few decades ago. New species keep surfacing. New hosts, new mechanisms. Every answer opens 3 more doors. Music. And it leaves you with a thought that is hard to put back in a box. The line between an animal's own behavior and the biology of what lives inside, it is far thinner than it looks. The most unsettling dramas in nature are not the ones on a screen. Music, They are unfolding right now in the leaves and soil of ordinary forests, among the small, overlooked things we walk past without a second glance. The next time you hear cicadas, music roaring in the trees on a summer night, or watch a fly bumping at a window, or notice an ant marching alone away from its trail, you might find yourself wondering just for a second whether it is acting on its own. Most of the time it is, but not always. And that small flicker of doubt is the closest any of us will ever come to seeing the world the way these music parasites have shaped it. It was never a virus. It is something the natural world built on its own slowly over millions of years, and it is still spreading. So what do you make of all this? If you could ask one of these parasites a single question and get an honest answer, what would it be? Drop in the comments below, because I read them and the best ones genuinely shape what we cover next. If this changed the way you see the natural world even a little, hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming, and tap the next video on your screen right now, because the story does not end here. I will see you there. The silent passenger. From the outside, the infected ones look flawless. They climb, they fly, they call, they chase mates with every sign of health. Nothing your eye could catch sets them apart. Only a small fraction of any brood carries it. Roughly 1 in 20, which means they move through the healthy millions as perfect ghosts, indistinguishable until you turn one over and see what is missing. But the controls have already changed hands. The passenger is a fungus called Massospora. Casson and his team, including researchers like Brian Love and Greg Boyce, believe it gets into the cicadas while they are still underground, finding the young insects early and simply waiting beside them in the soil. For years, it stays dormant, doing no harm, showing nothing. It is patient in a way that feels almost intentional, almost calculated. Then the cicada finally surfaces, reaches adulthood, and something flips. The fungus activates and begins eating its host from the inside while the insect keeps living, keeps moving as though nothing is wrong. Quezon's team even has a name for this unnerving trick of keeping the victim alive and working. They call it active host transmission, and only a handful of organisms on the planet are known to pull it off. Sit with the timeline for a second. An organism that
Dan doesn't know. The researchers don't know. We got to figure that out. Get into the mind of the cicada. Stay tuned. Right now in the forest of North America, animals are being turned into zombies. And the scientists tracking it are worried. This is not a movie. It is documented. It is real. And it is spreading into new ground and possibly new species. With music, every passing season, something is getting inside living creatures, hollowing them out and taking the controls, steering them like puppets toward a death that serves only the thing inside them. There's a fungus that infects insects, gets inside an ant, for example, travels through its circulatory system to the ant's brain. The hosts look completely eerily normal right up until the end. But the headlines have one detail wrong, and the truth, music, behind it is far stranger than any virus. The thing itself. Start with that word from the title. When you hear that something is turning animals into zombies and creeping across North America, your mind reaches for the obvious villain, a virus, something that leaps from body to body in a cough or a bite, the way every outbreak headline has trained us to picture contagion. Get past this visceral aversion we all have towards parasites and try to show how amazing these creatures really are. That is not what this is. Matt Casson, a mycologist at West Virginia University who has spent years chasing this thing through the forests after dark, will tell you so himself. What he studies is not a virus at all. It is a fungus. And that distinction is not a technicality. It is the whole horror of it. A virus is music, blunt. It copies itself and drifts on. This does something far more deliberate. It does not simply grow on an animal. It grows inside one, threading itself through living tissue, and then it begins to drive. It rewires behavior. It overrides instinct. Music. It walks the host into places it would never go and makes it perform acts that serve only the thing inside it. By the time anything looks visibly wrong from the outside, the animal has already stopped belonging to itself. And it is not one rogue organism. It is an entire hidden category of life that has spent tens of millions of years perfecting the hijacking of other creatures. Most of them specialize in insects, but not all of them stop there. And one of them has found its way into territory uncomfortably close to home. The reason almost nobody knows this is happening is that it hides in plain sight. It does not announce itself with a sick, dying animal. Music. It works through hosts that look perfectly fine, that go about their lives as instructed, that you would walk straight past in your own backyard. We will get to the one that reaches toward us first. The one, music. Casson is chasing through the dark because it runs on a clock no human has ever managed to control. But another opioautisps that infects cicada juveniles under the ground as they await to emerge and become adults. The long wait. Deep beneath the forest floor, something has been waiting for more than a decade. Not poetically, literally. Every several years, billions of seekers push up through the soil after spending nearly their entire lives in near total darkness underground. Some stay buried for 13 years. Others wait as long as 17. The whole time they feed quietly on tree roots, drawing no attention, doing nothing dramatic, invisible to the world above. A human child born during one emergence can be finishing high school before the next one arrives. Then, on a signal we still cannot fully read, they erupt. Not in a trickle, in a flood. Trees disappear beneath their bodies. Their mass call climbs to a volume that drowns out the rest of the forest. Every predator within reach gorges itself, and it changes nothing. Because when billions surface at once, being eaten becomes a rounding error. Millions die. Millions more live to breed. It is one of the oldest survival strategies on Earth. Drown the world in so many bodies that no predator can matter. It has worked for ages. And to stand in those woods during an emergence is to feel the ground itself come alive. The air vibrating. The trees heavy with bodies. The whole landscape surrendered to them for a few short weeks. Then almost as fast as it began, it ends. And the survivors leave behind the eggs that start the next 13 or 17-year countdown. But hidden inside that flood is something no predator can see and no instinct can warn against. A fraction of these seekers are carrying a passenger. Something that has been waiting in the dark exactly as long as they have. And the moment they climb into the light, it wakes up. As you can see, I could shake it over my head and put it close to my face. And I'm not worried about turning into a zombie anytime soon.